Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we'll be, back off a great stream. Oh, you know what? I was going to talk about Scotland things, but I guess we should talk about Duck Detective, The Secret Salami, which, if you don't know, it's the game I played today on my stream. You can catch a VOD on Twitch, or you can catch next week when it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. Up to you. Here's a plug. I should really plug at the beginning more Twitch. Please do follow me on Twitch. I do stream every Sunday, so you can actually catch me live. And if more people get interested, I will start streaming more. That's basically the long and short of it. Hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow at 6:05 PM on Sunday, September 15th, 2024. I really got to remember to actually start plugging it more at the beginning, so people actually maybe start checking me out there, because I mean. But being able to stream, I think, is a lot of fun, to be perfectly honest. And it's, I've already got a small YouTube audience. I might as well get people going along to the streams as well. I think definitely a problem at the moment for it is the fact that it's probably quite early for my largely American fan base, which means right now, because I stream probably in the morning, depending on where you live. I would like to get some later evening streams in, but there's not much. It's quite hard to, I suppose, motivate that at the moment when I don't have a lot of time to do so. But, should I get 100 followers? Should I, be able to get some partnerships and people can start subscribing? Then I think there's a monetary incentive in there, which would be quite nice. Anywho, not the point. What we're here to talk about today is Duck Detective and is it called The Secret of a Salami? That doesn't sound right. The Salami Bandit is what it's called in the game, but The Secret of a Salami does not sound like what it should have been called. No, it's called The Secret Salami. Okay, fair enough. It's a very short, sort of fun story-esque detective sort of game. It's, I would say, kind of similar vibes to what's it called? Tangle Tower. I'm trying to think of another game it might be similar to. I think Tangle Tower may be the best sort of comparison. I would say I enjoyed it. It's a very short experience. I got it done in 2.5 hours in the stream. Maybe you could get it done slower, faster, depending on how long it takes you to get through some of the puzzles. But it's a very simplistic game. It's not I warn you before I get into spoilers or anything. I don't think spoilers matter a bit in this game, because it is kind of really the core mechanic in this game is kind of puzzles. But it's a relatively straightforward game to talk about. What of its main points? It's super cute and charming. I love the absolute style of it. The voice acting goes so hard, unbelievably hard. Shout out to the voice directors and the actors, wherever they absolutely sell it. Because it's such a cutesy looking game. It looks almost like you're playing with toys, I suppose, you're a sticker walking around. But then the Duck Detective just got that hard and grisly gumshoe detective voice going on, which I can't do, but it's fantastic. Its mechanics are fine. The puzzles are not some of the puzzles I think are pretty good. Some of the puzzles I'm okay, it's I know what's going on, but it's hard to for me to input it in the mechanics which are given to me. And some of them I'm just I kind of had to leap for that. It was a little bit there's a little bit, but it's not damning to the game or anything, because I don't think it's the game's main selling point. I wouldn't buy this game just for the puzzle solving. I would buy the game for the experience of a fun story, is what I'd say. Yeah, so what to talk about? Duck Detective is a sort of, it's not visual novel, but it's got that sort of vibe, where it's story-based investigation sort of game. You play as the detective, a Duck Detective. It's got, story-wise, it has this sort of gritty noir 1920s feel, but aesthetically and actually visual presentation-wise, it does not have that at all. It's got a very sort of Sunday morning, not Sunday morning cartoon, but some sort of cartoony sort of cutesy game vibes is probably what I'd say. And honestly, the sort of juxtaposition between the two works in its favour, I think. It's super, super amusing just to see a very simple rendered sprite of a duck, which almost looks like a sticker book sort of thing, just go into this really sort of not grisly, but grim monologue about how basically his life is going downhill and it all sucks and it's all dreary. But then it's all really nicely bright coloured and all that sort of thing. That I think it's fun. The characters are by far and away the main selling point, I think, of me in this game. The characters are just like, at the core of it, actually, the characters are very simple. Like, they're not really all that fleshed out. Like, they have like a few basic personality traits, so they don't have like huge amounts of line. But the voice acting is so hard in this game. It's so good. It's so like grandiosely and theatrical and over the top, in just the perfect way to absolutely sell what's going on, in my opinion. But the entire, so I mean, that's enough about the aesthetics and that sort of thing. The aesthetics are great. I mean, you can look at the trailer, that's what you get. If you like it, you'll like it. If you don't, you don't. It plays really well into this sort of like having this sort of serious, trying to give a serious vibe, while really secretly they're like, we know we're doing like a silly vibe at the same time. So it's like tongue-in-cheek, I suppose, in that thing. I think the average part of the game is definitely the mechanical part. Like, the puzzles are kind of good. Like, it's fun to explore. It's very, so should I say, watered down. There's not like a huge amount of like exploration and clues to get. Like, it's all like divided up into chapters. You are in the same place basically the entire time. Sometimes you unlock more rooms of a place that you're exploring, but like it's not a huge difference. So most things are rather self-contained. There's like 3 chapters basically where you go through, which is a nice sort of pacing to it. In the first chapter, what you're doing basically is trying to find out, establish all the identities and establish what occupation they are. You're basically trying to build up a profile. The second one is you're trying to sort of uncover like what actually happened, or like what this conspiracy is. And the third one is like putting all the pieces together essentially. But how it works mechanically is it works like an exploration sort of game. There's just like things to interact with, and there'll be keywords which pop up in conversation which you can use and like bank for later. And there's clues you can investigate to get more keywords from, or more like and contextual clues about what's happening in the game. And then what happens is at any time you have a logbook, just kind of like not Papers, Please, Return of the Obra Dinn style, where you can fill in information which you think you've uncovered. And the main information is, in the beginning, it's filling in the profiles. You've got to find people's names. But then you have like this fill in the blank sort of like Mad Lib style of piecing together the evidence and figuring out the story essentially. It'll be like blank person did blank and talked to blank because they are blank's blank or something like that. Which is my major caveat with this game is sometimes it's quite overwhelming to do that. Like, I love the puzzle games, but like when I got to like the later ones and it was like blank was blank and blank blanks because blank blank blanks, I was just like, what? and you might say like that's kind of a point. It's meant to be overwhelming, like it's meant to be a lot and you piece it together bit by bit. But the thing is, it ended up feeling too directed, I suppose, what some of the things were. Like, some of them were just like way too obvious. Like, there was no doubt what it could have been in the first place. Like, okay, spoilers are plenty ahead. There's no medium and high spoilers. Anything I say now is off limit. It could be said. I could spoil the entire game for you within the next 12 minutes. So if you haven't played a game, go play it. It's really short, like 2.5 hours. You can like knock it out pretty quick, and it's fun. It's worth it, I think. Or if you don't want to play it, watch my playthrough. Why not? But I would say that your experience probably won't be ruined story-wise, knowing what happens, but probably puzzle-wise it will ruin the experience if you know what the puzzle solution is beforehand. But some of the blanks to fill in are like pretty good. It's just like, oh, you know, I don't know generally who might go here. Normally these are like with people's names, whereas it's like, who is this talking about? That worked pretty well. But sometimes some of them are just like, this is so obvious what should go here. Like, the one that stands out to me is the one where the blank was like legally, illegally, and I can't even remember what the other descriptor is. Like, obviously it's going to be illegally, right? Because we're like investigating a crime scene, an investigation. Of course, like, why would we be investigating something which legally happened? And the other adjective just didn't make sense in like any context, I think. So it's just like, it feels like it has to be illegally, and at which point I just go like, why even bother put that like fill in the blank in? Because it kind of like muddies the entire. It muddies it when I'm trying to like fill in the blanks or trying to fill out what the answers is. It just feels a bit pointless. Because I mean, like, you could argue, okay, you kind of want to gate it to make sure that you don't unlock the illegally keyword at the correct like location or something. But I'm like, okay, fair enough. But then at the same time, I'm just like, I feel like there's maybe a more graceful way to do it. Because the key point, which I think Tangled Tower does actually pretty well, is that they have very simple sentences to uncover. Well, this one, the sentences do get quite involved, and just like sort of cursory glance looking at them is like, it's hard to get a footing on it at all. because I'm just like, what am I even like trying to interpret here? Well, with Tango Tower, it's all like very bite-sized, I think, which is what I think Tango Tower does pretty well. So that's one thing I think Dark Detective does like a little bit iffily, is that maybe they would do better with splitting up like the things you're trying to decipher more, or maybe like you had to fill in less blanks or something. I do want the puzzles, because I think the joy of the puzzles actually for them is them rewarding you for putting together the pieces of the information. Because very interestingly, I feel like it's very easy to get into the sort of habit of like, oh, you know, like how in school you would used to answer questions by basically picking out words from the questions and just like mashing together the numbers that might be in a maths question, and you'll probably get the right answer. This time, if they actually sort of like invert that, like some puzzle games it's very easy, or detective games it's like, oh, these are the things which were given to me, presumably these are the things I need to fill the blank in. Oberdin is like an extreme example where like it's none of that is given to you and you basically have to fill in the same information, but that's due to its own structure. It sort of accommodates that. The Dark Detective actually does like what I think is actually quite a nice in-between, where they give you a very obvious overarching thing which happens. Like you can figure out very quickly on what the general goal is, but then finding the finer details might get like a little bit more difficult. You actually have to do a lot of extrapolating of data, sometimes maybe too much extrapolating for data, I would say. Not because I think it's bad to extrapolate for data, but some of them I definitely was like, I didn't feel like there was a concrete proof of that. I feel like I just extrapolated that as a guess of like what seemed reasonable, but that also could be a skill issue. That could be my own fault, where I just didn't find the evidence where it was like, this definitively points to that. Because some of the game, the part that really impressed me is where you had to compare handwritings to one another, because I actually pointed out very early on when I was playing, I was like, there's distinct handwriting. I was cross-referencing two pieces of evidence it gave me early on, trying to figure out who wrote what, trying to figure out whose writing was whose handwriting. And then it actually came into play later, and I was like, that's pretty clever. That is good rewarding. Because, you know, I almost wish they didn't explicitly say in the clue what to do, because they actually have two different difficulty modes. One where it says we're not going to give you many clues, and one says we're going to give you a lot of clues if you're stuck. Because that was pretty cool. It would be so rewarding after like that sort of build up of me looking at the handwriting, figuring out who's doing what, to finally be able to crack the final clue, being like, hey, I can compare the handwriting and figure out what's going on. That would have been super cool, but to be fair, I think that's it can be a bit obtuse because it's not something people would expect to have to compare. So I understand the need for prompting there. But there's a lot of times as well where I very much felt like, oh, this is like, feels like a lot of guesswork, where I'm trying to, I feel like I know I understand what happened, I just don't know how to input it in what you're giving me. Some of it was skill issue. Like there's one very early on where it was about, I don't know, like the correct answer was, it was like Freddy is being framed by, well, okay, what I thought it was like Freddy is being framed by, okay, now I have to guess someone, because Freddy picked up the wrong bag. Is essentially what the thing was, and I was just like, I don't know who to put in here because I don't know what it is. That was skill issue. Turns out if you scroll down to the bottom, it says basically the suspect, the Salami bandit, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was an option for me. So that was like a kind of skill issue thing, but it's also kind of a minor thing, because I do feel like maybe that should have been put near the top, because it started with like nobody, right, as like one of the top options, so you would have thought those would be like the generalist options, and then it'd be specifics underneath. But that's skill issue, that's my own fault. But there was some like later ones though where I was like, I know what happened plot wise, I just don't know how to put this in. I think the one that stands out to me was definitely the one with major spoilers, Sarah being the accomplice for I can't remember his name now, Ernst, and me basically being like, I know Sarah was the accomplice, I know she was basically being blackmailed and that sort of thing, but I couldn't figure out how to put it in the thing, because one of the options was like, Sarah was accomplice, lover, or enemy, and we are literally just put an accomplice, and I was like, why even bother putting in this thing here if it's not going to be one of the other options? Like, why bother putting in the option of accomplice, lover, and enemy if it's going to be accomplice sort of each time, I guess? And like, why not use that lover, because Sarah was a lover to what's his name, Boris, but I don't think you even put that in or something. I can't remember. But basically, it felt like I had this solution. I just couldn't figure out how to put it into the answer form, essentially, which can be a, definitely skill issue, but it's also because it was so much at once. You had to fill in like 8 blanks. I'm just like, okay, well, this is how the story I feel like is told as I understand it. I don't know which part I've got wrong, but which is fine. It's fine to not know which part you got wrong. But it's also like, because it's so many things at once, it's like, oh, this is like me misinterpreting one part of it, or me like filling it in slightly wrong has now turned into me questioning if I actually understand the story at all. That's, I think, a problem with having so many things sort of spread out. But I think this is sort of just like a personal taste issue, maybe. Because of like how simplistic the game looked, maybe I sort of like, I think I very much overthought it myself, where I was like, oh, I got it wrong. I must have like the entire wrong story, rather than as like, oh, I picked a wrong verbiage here or something. But yeah. I think it does pretty well at doing sort of like Chekhov's gun thing, where you find out like information about the characters pretty early on from just like analysing them, and then I'm just like, that will probably play in later somewhere. Like the one which stands out to me was like Rufus was like, oh, he's a sci-fi fan because he has like these sci-fi stickers on his toolbox. I'm like, okay, that will probably play in at some point. I mean, I know that Margaret has like her password being like sexy alien, basically. As her like computer password. I mean, that seems pretty sci-fi. That probably plays into it somehow. And then like a sci-fi book was given, and it's like, okay, you can make that link. Although, to be fair, I made an incorrect link because I thought that meant Margaret gave a book, but neither here nor there. Oh, actually, that was the biggest one where I was just like, I'm not even sure why this one is the correct answer. But after the birthday, and Sarah was given some stuff, one of the things is she was given salami by the salami bandit and then starts crying, and when you go, that's strange, what's going on? But the correct answer in the book is that nothing was stolen, was the thing, because it was just like, you had to figure out who gave what gift, and like one of them gave a plushie, one gave a necklace, one gave a book, and then the final thing to fill in is like, and something was stolen and Salami replaced it or something. But the answer to that was nothing was stolen. But like the only reason I guessed that is because I was like, I collected all the information and no one has said anything about my gift being missing. Is it correct for me to assume this? Because a lot of the other things were sort of kind of spelled out, which is why I'm like, it's a weird balance, because there's an expectation that things are going to sort of be directly said, right? But there's also the expectation where like, in reality, I would have to infer information from like incomplete data and sets, right? So it's kind of weird in the context of a game, because in the game I'm sort of primed to be like, oh, the game is going to tell me this, it's going to like highlight it in red, if it brings it up, it's a Chekhov's gun, it's going to be relevant, and that's why I input it. But this is a very weird thing where it was never mentioned, and then that was the Chekhov's gun for the correct answer, which I'm kind of like torn on it, because for one, it's like a subversion, I suppose, of like expected game language, like the things where people know like, oh, the A button's to jump, or no, like jumping on an enemy might kill it, or something like that, or you shouldn't jump off ledges, that might be fall damage. And like detective games, that sort of thing is like, if something is not explicitly confirmed, that might not be necessarily the correct way to deduce the information. And that's why I'm just like, on one hand, I'm like, it feels a bit weird, because a lot of the other clues were sort of more like explicitly told or something. But then I actually kind of do appreciate it. I just wish it was more baked explicitly into the tutorial. Like they have a really great tutorial where you put things together. They should have had something in that tutorial where it's like you would have to extrapolate based on the information you had or what seems logical, because I think that'd be cool. There's another one where it was like, oh, where did Sarah get kidnapped to? And you extrapolate that it was the bus she's kidnapped to, because you can see on the CCTV footage it was open, and you go out there and it's closed. I think that's very clever. It's just like, I feel like, I guess this is what I mean, is that I felt like it came, if I was primed that that's what I should be looking out for, then it would be okay. And you might be like, that's too much hints. I don't mean it by the way of like, give me a hint. I mean it by the way that when you play a game, there is a sort of like agreed handshake between player and developer of like, I'm going to suspend my disbelief. I'm going to pretend these are invisible barriers, not because I'm like, oh, this game is unrealistic, but because the developer didn't want you to go that way, or didn't want to develop like a whole open world. It doesn't make sense. And there's sort of like an unwritten handshake where I'm like, okay, I'm a detective, of course I can have meta-knowledge and guess on things and what I think is reasonable, but I'm going to play by the rules of a game. Of a detective, I'm going to try and work with the information I have. And this is a very interesting one where it's like I had to work with the information I wasn't given to get the answer, which is really cool, but also because I wasn't expecting it, I was just like, oh, I got the wrong conclusion when I didn't get that information. Instead of being like, oh, this I need to draw the conclusion from extrapolated information, I went with I missed something, because the game has not explicitly told me so. So I think it's really cool. I just think it just to have like a small change tutorial, just have one very simple clue where you had to extrapolate from incomplete information, I think. Which I guess you can kind of say the bread one is, but I don't know, I think it needs to be a bit stronger than that. But either way, now I'm talking out loud. I actually think that was genuinely a very, very cool a way to do this sort of puzzle. Anyway, what can I say? The game's fun. The game's good. But yeah, just a bit short, if anything. I'd love to see more from this company, to be honest, and maybe a follow-up sequel, who knows. It feels like there's a lot you can do with this, especially because of how much of a brain teaser it is to be able to extrapolate, you know, the rest of a storyline from incomplete information. Is a really cool idea for a detective game, to be honest. Definitely it can be a lot of hit and miss, because if it aligns with what people are thinking, great, fantastic hit. If it doesn't align with what people extrapolate, total miss, which makes it feel impossible, like Moon Logic. But anyway, I had a fun time. Also, maybe I just missed a very obvious clue. Who knows? Anyway, on that note, I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been dear darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.